Hi, my name's Matthew Drury. I'm an assistant psychologist and I work for the Isle of Man Government's Mental Health Service. In this short video, I'm going to talk about grief. I will explain what grief is and how it impacts us. I will also dispel some common myths about grief and outline the symptoms that people might experience because of grief. Grief encompasses lots of different emotions, and it's important that people understand grief a little bit more right now due to all the losses associated with coronavirus. Grief is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something you have or someone you love has been taken away. Often, the pain of loss can feel overwhelming. You may experience all kinds of difficult and unexpected emotions, from shock to anger, disbelief, guilt, and a profound sense of sadness. The pain of grief can also upset your physical health. You may find it hard to sleep, eat, or even think straight. These are normal reactions to loss, and the more significant the loss, the more intense your grief may be. Coping with the loss of something or someone you love can be one of life's biggest challenges. You may naturally associate grieving with the death of a loved one. However, people can grieve many different types of losses. This includes divorce, relationship breakdown, losing your physical health, retirement, losing a job, the death of a pet, or even a friend moving away. Even subtle losses in life can trigger a sense of grief. For example, you might grieve when moving away from home and going to university. You might also grieve when you graduate college, or when a friend leaves. Whatever your loss is, it's personal to you. So don't be ashamed about how you feel. And also, don't expect yourself to grieve over certain things. It's okay if you're struggling with the loss of something. During COVID, losses for people could have included the loss of a loved one, the loss of a normal routine, hobbies and interests, losing working environments, and possibly even losing their job. There are some myths associated with grief. The first I want to dispel is that the pain will go away faster if you ignore it. This is not true, and ignoring your pain is unhelpful in the long term. In order to heal, it's necessary to allow your emotions to be present and be able to deal with them effectively. Another myth is that people believe grieving should last a certain time, usually about a year. This is also untrue. There is no specific time frame for grieving. It depends from person to person and how significant and meaningful that loss was to you. So don't expect yourself to grieve within a certain amount of time. While loss affects people in many different ways, there may still be some common symptoms that people might experience. Remember that almost anything you experience in the initial stages of grief is absolutely normal, including feeling like you're going crazy, feeling like you're in a bad dream, or questioning your religious or spiritual beliefs. Some emotional symptoms of grief include shock and disbelief. Right after a loss, it can be hard to accept what's happened. You may feel numb, you may have trouble believing that the loss actually happened, and you also may find you deny the truth. If someone you love has died, you may keep expecting them to show up even though they're gone. Profound sadness is probably one of the most common symptoms of grief. You may have feelings of emptiness, despair, yearning, and deep loneliness. You may also cry a lot or feel emotionally unstable, and that's okay. You may regret or feel guilty about the things you did or didn't say or do. You may also feel guilty about having certain feelings, such as feeling relieved that the person is no longer suffering with a long-term illness. After a death, you may even feel guilty for not doing something to prevent that death, even though there was nothing you could have done. Even if the loss was nobody's fault, you may still feel angry and resentful. If you've lost a loved one, you may be angry with yourself, the doctors, or even God. You may also be angry with the person who died, as you may feel that they abandoned you. You might feel the need to blame someone for the injustice that was done to you, and that makes sense when the loss is really difficult to deal with. A significant loss can trigger your own worries and fears. You may feel anxious, helpless, and insecure. The death of a loved one can create fears around your own mortality. You may also fear living life without that person and carrying through the responsibilities by yourself. People often think that grief is a strictly emotional process, but grief often includes physical health problems. This can include fatigue, nausea, lowered immunity, weight loss or weight gain, aches and pains in different parts of your body, or even insomnia. There are said to be stages to grief, and this includes denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These stages are not rigid and can be experienced at any time, so do not expect yourself to feel a certain way at a particular time. While grieving a loss is an inevitable part of life, there are things that you can do to help yourself cope and move forward when you're experiencing grief. Firstly, you can acknowledge your pain and accept that grief encompasses lots of different, complicated emotions that may come up at unexpected times. Try to understand that your grieving process will be unique to you, and try not to resist or fight your emotions. As difficult as this can be, emotions are more likely to heal if you allow them to be present. Also, seek out face-to-face support from people that you know care about you. Even if you take pride in being strong and self-sufficient, it's important that you talk to others, as this helps relieve the emotional pain as you're able to express yourself towards people that you trust. You could also try to accept that sometimes people feel awkward and uncomfortable when trying to comfort someone who's grieving. This does not mean that they cannot support you. Sometimes people may feel unsure about what to say and may say the wrong thing, and you might take this in the wrong way. If you acknowledge that talking about grief makes people feel uncomfortable, you're more likely to accept this. Don't let this stop you from talking to your loved ones. Try to communicate clearly what it is you need from them. A shoulder to cry on, help with funeral arrangements, or even somebody just to hang out with. Support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically. You can do this through engaging in self-care activities, such as your usual hobbies and interests, pampering yourself, or doing things that you enjoy. You might not feel like this in the early stages. However, encouraging yourself into these kinds of activities will help you accustom and deal with the loss. If you're really struggling, there are services on island to help you, which include cruise bereavement care, who can help with the loss of a loved one. If there are other losses you are struggling to come to terms with, you may wish to access online counselling via Quell, which is for adults, and Couth, which is for children and adolescents. There are also mental health services available to you on the island. You can go to your GP and they can refer you, or you can self-refer yourself. If you are experiencing a loss or are grieving in some way due to all the changes that have happened this year, it's okay if you're struggling. Remember, don't expect yourself to heal immediately. There is no time frame and no specific way to overcome grief. Be patient with yourself and be kind to yourself. And if you need support, there's support out there for you. Thank you and take care.